All right, welcome back to another Hanging Einstein. This is episode 9. I am joined by another legend in the fantasy football, college football, NFL networks. Matt Waldman is going to be with me today. But before I get into that, I've never done a monologue with this show, and I don't know if I'm going to start to continue to do this after today, but it feels kind of relevant with everything that's happened since the last time I recorded. Just to kind of bring you up to speed, I went to the Jets-Bills game last Thursday night, and I actually skinned one of the Bills fans and took his Bills helmet, and it was going to be kind of a little joke I had on the show today. In actuality, I didn't steal this from anybody. He is a Bills fan. We kind of bartered an arrangement. The reason I kind of say that is because, as many are aware, on Friday, kind of the world we live in kind of took another, change. And the only reason I even mention this isn't a political show. This isn't anything, with any personal agendas or anything like that. But many people know I'm a firefighter here in New York. I was, firsthand part of 9/11, and that really changed my life. And after everything that happened in France in Paris on Friday and everything that's been going on, it's just kind of a reminder to me and something I feel, imperative to kind of tell everybody else that might be watching this. You really never know. I think the good people in the world far outweigh the bad, but continue to be vigilant and continue to, enjoy your life and savor the good times. These things like football, fantasy football, everything we talk about, they're healthy distractions. And it's really important that we have these things. So I'm happy to be able to come on today and bring Matt Waldman with me. A lot of people know him, tremendous amount of respect for this man. So thank you for allowing me to just kind of share that real quick. It's really just more a message of, appreciate life and the opportunities you have. And for me personally, I'm appreciating this moment because you're somebody I've looked up to for a long time. And now I get a chance to actually hang out with you today. So Matt, how's it going?
Man, it's going great. I thought your monologue went well and it was well stated, and it's nice to be able to, start a show on just trying to give some perspective that's some positivity, because certainly in the world, it's a beautiful world's a beautiful place. And, but at the same time, there's some ugly things with it as well. Sometimes it's out of unintentionally trying to make things more beautiful depending on your point of view, and sometimes it can be done out of fear, and fear can turn into ugly things. So right. I definitely appreciate that perspective, and I love being on. I mean, this is going to be great for us to have a conversation and sit and hang out and just talk about whatever comes to mind, I suppose. So.
Absolutely. Well, now I got to first start by saying it innately sounds wrong to say this, but it's mid-60s on a mid-November day here in the Northeast. And you are a little further south than I am. You have a jacket on and I have a T-shirt. So I think we're kind of backwards in this. How's the weather down by you?
It's not bad. It's about the same weather here, but I think I just came inside. I went to lunch, and I'm still feeling a little bit chilly right now. So and I'm also, I don't know, my office is kind of funky. It's kind of funny because sometimes it's a little cooler in this room than the rest of the house at certain times, and then a little warmer at certain times. So I don't know what it is. I just adjust and live with it.
No issue. Did you have anything good for lunch? Anything worth mentioning?
Yeah, there's this place down the road. I live about probably 50 miles north of Atlanta right now, and I just moved there. I lived in Athens, Georgia, near the University of Georgia for about 20 years, and I'm a little bit further north of Atlanta than I grew up from, but or at least part of my youth. And there's this little gas station down the street that actually this guy took out a little portion of the gas station, and he served smoked barbecue.
Wow.
So. His name's Rudy. He's a big Alabama fan. So I go up there every couple of weeks, and we sit around and we talk a little bit about prospects and have a good time, talk a little music, George Carlin a little bit. And then he's got a big old poster of George Carlin on the wall, and he does some catering too. But I just go to this little gas station, like a little convenience store. It's literally it's called a Valero. I don't even know if they have Valero in New York City.
Yeah, I'm familiar with Valero. I think a couple do exist here. I don't know if I know it from my travels or what, but I definitely know the Valero stations. But yeah. It's interesting. It seems like there's quite a few, and it's always like the places you would least suspect to be a great food establishment. And
yeah, there's like this weekend, my wife and I, she's closer to you right now. She's on business in New Jersey right now.
Okay.
And just left yesterday. But before we left, we went to this little Greek place that serves Greek and Persian food, and they're out of a Shell station, like about 15 miles from here, and it's always packed, and it's just, it looks like where, you know, usually where you have the liquor store next to the Shell station. It's like that type of attachment, but it's a restaurant, and you go in there and you forget they're even in a gas station. It's pretty cool.
Now, how many of these have you discovered along your travels in your career and what you do, and how many were just like random, just somebody told you or popped up? And the reason I say that is because I'm sure one exists, but if not, maybe we can. Maybe we just found it right now. We can co-create a travel guide for fantasy football or college football scouting and truck stops and
places dining, to eat. Right? Yeah, right. Man, I would say I just have always enjoyed traveling, and I've enjoyed driving around, and I don't mind checking out kind of out of the way spots or looking at something on the internet and seeing a review, and they go you know, my wife and I always joke that the best places always tend to be the places that people go, really? You want to like go there to eat? That seems kind of odd. Mm-hmm. So the little hole in the wall places are always fun. And so, yeah, I mean, we found quite a few. I think that when we went I go to the Senior Bowl as well, and Cecil Lammy, who, you know, a dear friend and colleague of mine, he and I, when we started going to the Senior Bowl together, we passed a little place that we like called, Saucy Q. And what's so funny about Saucy Q is that we go by there, and once we got there, it's a little kind of a hole in the wall. And all the scouts were there. Marvin Lewis, I swear to you, if Marvin Lewis, like 20 years from now, and I run into each other in a completely random place, and I swear he may look at me one day and go, I have no idea who you are, but you look so familiar, and I have no understanding why. I'm going to say Saucy Q, Mobile, Alabama, and he'll know exactly what I mean, because I see him there every single year. I see him at the airport. Even last year at the airport, I swear to you, he looked at me for a minute. I mean, like, I'm just waiting for Cecil. He looked at me for a minute as he got off the plane, and I saw him look at me a little longer, like,
I know you from
thought, this guy, I don't think I mean, like, he doesn't know me from Adam, but it was funny. It was like, he could tell. It was funny. There was some weird recognition, like, why do I always see this guy, or like, I've seen this guy before and I don't know why.
Right. Absolutely. And I experienced that same exact thing this past year. We went in between the North and South practice, and guys were like, come on, we got to go here. We got to go here. I was hanging out with a couple guys like Ian Wharton from Bleacher Report, NFL Film Study, Scott Karasik from down in Atlanta, another Bleacher Report, mostly Bleacher Report guys, but all great guys. They dragged me with them. Brian Perez, who you're friends with as well, Draft Breakdown. They all dragged me. We got to go to Saucy Q's and get there. And the line's out the door. You know, people fighting over tables, and you look around, and it was a who's who of college football, basically. So it was pretty cool to be a part of that. But now you mentioned the wife. What does she do? Are you at liberty to say?
Yeah, sure. My wife Alicia is she works in procurement. She's a procurement manager. Really what that involves is that she negotiates contracts for her company and makes sure that they save money. So she's the person that the salespeople or suppliers to her company deal with. And so she's the person that basically negotiates and saves her company money. And so I've written a trade article on fantasy football, and I've modeled it a lot off of her advice. And it was a very popular article, and it was actually of her work. She did that. She also ran her own business for a while. She can pretty much do anything with tools other than plumbing and electric, and it's only because she doesn't want to learn. So she ran her own kind of house rehab, decorating combination business in North Carolina for years before we met, and that was successful for a number of years until she decided to go back into the corporate world for a little bit. So I would say she's a person of multiple tools and tasks, and you know, she's someone who definitely is a very good negotiator. And someone who also who can, you know, who works very hard.
Nice. It's funny because I've had, you know, a heavy hitting list of guests on this show so far, and everybody defers to their wife, saying that's the smartest one in their household. And you know, you want to think they're being courteous, but then when you actually develop the story a little bit more, it's true. It seems to be the women in our lives are a lot
Yeah. I mean, I met my wife later in life, at least at this stage of my life right now. So we've been married for 7 years. And, you know, I was always looking for someone who would be an equal in a partnership. Like I was always looking for like a true partnership, and really wanted someone who I felt like that, you know, that we meshed well personality wise, but we were also equals in terms of how we looked at running things in the household. Didn't mean that we always had equal say about what we did. When you're partners with anybody, whether it's business or whether it's a marriage or an intimate relationship, you kind of take on roles and you agree what those roles are. And sometimes, you know, my wife's good at long-term planning. I'm better at when we're in that moment and actually executing it. Pointing, you know, kind of seeing how things work. And, you know, she's someone that definitely can call me on my stuff and I can call her on hers, and neither of us are worried about that. And we just keep it moving and enjoy it. And we have a good time. And she often filters into our shows on the Audible. And it's, you know, some of the humor that we have with her that go on with that, because there's, you know, Dr. Gene Bramble's a good friend of mine, and we always have some back and forth, and she has some good jokes or things to relay about him. Like she tore her Achilles once, and Gene and my wife was a track athlete way back in the day, and it was funny because when Gene I asked him about Achilles injuries. He said, I don't know. I don't handle Achilles. And so the joke now is, my wife always says, is that he doesn't, kids must not have Achilles tendons because he doesn't know anything about them.
Well, she's got to be the Achilles expert for the Audible now.
Yeah, right. Exactly. She does. Then she wants to come on basically to help refute the claims that Dr. Gene Bramble is a you know, understands anything about the lower leg.
Right. Nice. Well, you mentioned before your home and the temperature differences and all that. So hopefully that's something people might have just learned. But the reason I mention that is because I'm here with Matt Waldman, and you can see many people are familiar with the surrounding from your film study sessions, where this is your layout. So this is really the Matt Waldman that's with me. I want to ask you now, though, what did you do prior to your current role, and what was the turning point for you that you decided this was going to be my deal, and I could, you know, make this a full-time thing?
It's interesting. I mean, I still work multiple jobs. I mean, I'm a features writer for a magazine at the University of Georgia at the College of Business. So I write magazine features and help edit that magazine. It comes out twice a year to about 65,000 people. I've been doing that since 2006. But that kind of went along with why I wanted to become a writer. And I'm a long form storyteller. I think everyone pretty much knows that about me if they've seen my stuff. And if you haven't, sit down and take a load off, because I tend to be a little long-winded. But I will say, I'm 45 years old. I wanted to be a jazz musician when I entered school as a music student, and I went to the University of Miami, and I realized that, you know, after a couple of years, yep, the U, that's right. You know, so I went to the U back in the late '80s for a couple of years. I saw very early on that I was a big fish in a small pond in Atlanta when I entered Miami and listened to guys playing, and I was thinking that must be the professor, and it was another freshman trying out for the same class I was trying out for. Wow. And I'm in a world of hurt here. I've got a lot to work on, and you know, it was a hard couple of years. I worked very hard doing it, and I realized after probably my third summer, entering my junior year, during that summer I stayed in Miami and did a little gigging and you know, just worked and took classes. And I took a creative writing class, and there was this teacher who walked in, and she was probably in her mid-50s. She had been nominated for a Pulitzer Prize for her fiction. And she told her story about how she went to school there, dropped out, married a guy. She helped put him through law school while they had kids. Then when his practice was successful, she went back to school. She got a master's in psychology, wrote for the New England Journal of Medicine. Then her mother died, and she realized that she wanted to write fiction. And she wrote this book about a woman with Down syndrome, like a young woman with Down syndrome. Mm-hmm. and she was the main character, and you know, she knew James Michener and she knew Isaac Bashevis Singer, who were both writing down there as
Wow.
professors, and she sent them the book, and they said, actually, this is really good, but no one's ever going to publish a book where the protagonist is an 18-year-old woman with Down syndrome. And it got published, and she got nominated for the award, and next thing you know, she's down there teaching. And that struck me because I was sitting here struggling to be, wanting to be a musician so badly, more than anything I ever wanted to do. And I was always good in school, and I decided to do the music track, and it was the first time that I was really meeting with failure on a daily basis. And as a young man, that was kind of hard for me, and I was trying to figure, you know, kind of figure that all out. Things came easy to me, and that was the first one that was really hard, and I kept working at it. And you know, it kind of dawned on me that maybe I was going to have multiple careers in my life, you know, and that maybe you don't just go to school and you know exactly what you're going to be, and maybe I'm not going to be like that, and maybe that's okay.
Right.
So, you know, I ended up transferring to UGA. I just went because it was, honestly, it was because some of the places I had scholarships to, I no longer qualified for scholarships to go to. It was a state school, it was cheap, and they let me in, and I figured I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I went in as a journalism major, and I started at the newspaper there, and within a week I was hired on their student newspaper in a paid position, which usually takes about a semester or two to do. And my first article made the front page. I'd never written before. I'd never done anything. And this guy who worked at Sports Illustrated, his name was Kent Hannon. He worked at Sports Illustrated as a staff writer. You're around my age. Remember when Larry Bird was at Indiana State, and there's a famous cover of him doing this? He wrote that feature story on Larry Bird. You know, so he'd been there a long time. He graded the magazine writers and kind of met with them. And he taught a magazine class at the journalism program. He pulled me aside and he said, "Matt, have you ever done this before? Anybody in your family ever do this before? Anybody?" And he sat there and told me all the things I wanted to hear as a musician. But he told me about it as a writer. And I was like, and you would think, that's great, I'm going to go be a writer now. And I thought, this is BS. I don't want to do this. I'm like, I was just sitting there thinking, I don't even care about this. And I'm being told everything that I wanted to do to be a musician. I'm being told in the thing that I don't really even care about. So I quit as a writer, studied English, ended up working, different jobs, worked at building sets at a theater department, which poor them, but I tried hard and worked hard, so they kept me on. And then I took a telemarketing job just to make some extra money selling children's books to moms and dads, like little Golden books and the Disney books and stuff like that. That job became a part-time job where I got promoted, and then it became a career, and I got into the call center industry when AOL was just starting to get big, and I became a manager and a director for operations, and actually more a director for quality. I was a manager in operations. Then I was an assistant director for quality for about 60 branches around the United States. And I did a lot of work with all of that. And meanwhile, I'm still in Athens because I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. This was just a job I fell into. I had graduated. It was making me money, whatever. I was scared to write. I was just scared to write. I wasn't sure whether I was good enough to do it. And so football was always a big thing for me. And I always enjoyed it. I always wanted to play it. Played it pretty much every day till I was about 18, though I didn't play organized football. I played tackle football with our high school team pretty much once a week. Our band beat our football team in an impromptu game once. So I'm kind of proud of that.
You weren't on the band?
Yeah, I was in the band.
Okay,
I was in the band.
Which side were you taking sides with when the band?
I played in the band. We played the football team.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, me and one of my and then we'd play with some guys who were on the team, and we'd also just for fun, little pickup games. And I had a friend who who was probably too small to he was too small to play according to the coaches, though he'd whip everybody in practices. They never let him in. So we'd have fun because, you know, listening to him smack somebody over the middle when they try to catch a football, and him being about, you know, 2/3 of their size and lay the hammer down on them was kind of fun.
Makes it more impactful,
yeah, kind of, we had the chips on our shoulders, so it was fun. But yeah, so I ended up at some point realizing that I really wanted to write. And it was because, you know, I just had a lot of, you know, at one point I realized that I was working very hard in an industry that I didn't like. I didn't enjoy what I was doing. And I was always a hard worker, and I was learning all these different kind of skill sets. And one day it just kind of occurred to me, I was driving to work. I'm kind of an intuitive person. And I was driving to work one day, and I just kept getting this feeling like I can't go in today. And I never miss work. I couldn't go in, and I was just feeling sick to my stomach. And I like sat in the parking lot for about 10 minutes and finally forced myself to go in, sat in the office for 5 minutes, was like, no, I need to go home. And I called up my boss and was like, I'm taking the day off. He's like, yeah, man, no problem. So I went home, and I just was sad. I mean, I just remember going home and just crying, just like thinking, I can't be there for another year. And I sat and watched this movie. It's about New York. Is the 25th Hour. It was a Spike Lee movie. One of my favorite movies. Yeah. Watched that movie like all day long and thought, I got to change my life. Like, I have to change my life. And within a year, you know, I ended up writing, and I was writing some fantasy football during that time, but it was just something that was slowly growing, and I thought, and it was a way for me to get back into writing, and because I knew the subject matter and felt like that would help, and that kind of parlayed into doing a magazine job.
Wow. I'm just listening to your story, and there's so many things that I can interject to that kind of relate. And it's funny that you mentioned 25th Hour at that, because my father's a lawyer, used to be an entertainment lawyer. Spike Lee used to be one of his clients. So I've met and hung out with Spike Lee a few times, and I played college basketball, and I'm from New York. Every player at the end, when they line up, I've played with every one of those guys.
Wow.
So that's
awesome.
And you mentioned the journalism thing. Speaking of basketball again, I went to Providence my first year of college, and I wanted to get into journalism. I was always told I was a good writer, and I used to play basketball all the time at this local gym with Frank Isola, who was a New York Post writer at the time. Now he's a national NBA writer. And we were actually like buddies. We would go to lunch together. We'd play ball all day together. And now I can't even get him to return one of my tweets because I'm trying to get him on this show too. But so Frank, if you ever, watch this episode, I'm trying to reach you, buddy. But yeah, so I started journalism, and it was, I guess I have my own style of writing, or maybe it's more creative writing. So after a couple of weeks, a month or so, the first semester, I'm just thinking like everything that I thought was good writing, they're telling me I have to structure it differently, and it has to be different for journalism. And it was basically like trying to train my brain. I was just, this is maybe this isn't for me either. And it's funny that 20 years after the fact, I wound up getting into this industry as writing creatively, but because it starts out, and it's still to this day, you don't get paid for it. You do it for fun as a hobby. Obviously, you and I are at different levels, but it turns into, hey, this is what I want to write, and if somebody wants to read it, they're reading it this way. And fortunately enough, I've been able to, I guess, make more than a couple, friends and fans. So it's kind of progressed in this. But I want to get back. I didn't hear, you might have said this. Did you grow up in Georgia?
No, well, part of the way. My first half of my life, I was raised in Cleveland, Ohio.
Cleveland.
And yeah. So I was a diehard Cleveland Browns fan. Marty Schottenheimer, Bernie Kosar, Kevin Mack, Ernest Biner,
yep.
The dogs on those cornerbacks. So I was a huge Browns fan growing up. Then I moved down to Atlanta, Georgia when I was 10 years old. Most of my family was in Cleveland by way of New York. I had a grandfather who lived in Brooklyn, nice. Who grew up in Brooklyn and ended up becoming a professor down the line and taught in Miami actually before. well before I went there.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, that's where I was raised. And like you, I mean, I started writing about football because I just started writing my column. I didn't even submit it to anybody. I mean, I wrote a column for football. I wrote something for Football Guys in 2000 because I thought maybe, this seems like a good site.
Right.
They're taking contributions, and I thought, let me see if I can write something. They liked it, asked me if I wanted to do more, and then I disappeared for about 3 or 4 years. And then I thought maybe I'll start my own site, and I started writing this column called The Gut Check. And I thought, I'm just going to write it for me. I'm not even going to submit anything, do anything. And then I had a friend of mine who worked at FF Today by the name of Mike McGregor.
Mhm.
And Mike and I were in a league together through my friend who would lay the smack down on the football team. He and I were in a fantasy football league together, and he invited me to a league, and that's where I met Mike. Mike was like, have you ever written anything before? And I'm like, as a matter of fact, I've done a good bit of freelance work, but
Right.
that's not my profession, but I have some stuff. And he was like, these are great. Can we publish them? I'm like, sure. And those were like my first 3 Gut Check columns.
Nice. Nice. Now, I got to ask you too what your team is. I'm putting the U up because I actually am a Miami fan, and that's because New York, we have no. I mean, the closest thing we have to a major program is Rutgers. Of course, a lot of people in New York are Notre Dame fans because of the connection with Notre Dame. A lot of alumni there. But I took to the Hurricanes, and I've been that way since. So you're in Athens, or you were in Athens. You went to Georgia. I mean, it's a very good shot that you have some partiality to the Bulldogs.
Yeah, I'm an unusual fan because see, most of my family were Ohio State alums.
Mm-hmm.
So, I grew up watching Ohio State football, Chris Spielman and Keith Byers and all of those guys, Chris Carter for a while he was there. And so I watched Miami, and obviously Miami was great while I was there. So I always kept up with the Hurricanes. When I came to Georgia, I covered the team for a short period of time. I have never been to a UGA game.
Really?
So I work literally within a 5-minute walking distance of Sanford Stadium. I've walked down to the bottom of Sanford Stadium. I've sat there next to Vince Dooley while he was doing some stuff, that kind of thing. But I've never been a huge college football fan. Like, to me, it's always been about the NFL, and college to me is something you watch to see who's coming to the NFL.
Okay.
I mean, that's kind of been, so I'm a diehard Browns fan. I was, when they left to Baltimore, I still look at Baltimore and go, that's my team. Even the remnants of that character is still my team. I
didn't mean to cut you off, which happens to have featured a couple prominent Miami guys at that. So
exactly. Yeah. Imagine being a Browns fan and they draft Ray Lewis just after the team leaves,
right,
or just or that year that the team leaves, and you're just going, you got to be kidding me.
Right.
Like, really? Like, I got to watch this. So, it's, I've followed teams. I've become more of a person, and I never thought I'd be this way, because if you knew the kind of fan I was growing up, I was the kind of fan that would be upset for a week or two after a loss, or like jubilant after a win, but like hanging on every play.
Right.
Now I'm kind of more I'm a fair weathered fan. I follow teams based on their construction. And so I love that Browns team of tough defense, man-to-man corners who can play press coverage, with smart, resilient quarterbacks and a hard punishing running game, 4-3 defenses. Love those types of teams. So I became a Titans fan during the Eddie George, Steve McNair, Jeff Fisher era, and I was a fan then. And then when Marshawn Lynch went to Seattle, I became a fan.
Okay.
And so I've been a Seahawks fan, but all of those pale in comparison. And I guarantee you, if the Browns ever show a hint of life in terms of their organization, I will always root for them, but it will never be the same for me. I'll always I'm a big fan of players and scheme and how it works. I'll never be like that kind of fan again.
Yeah, and I totally get that. And I think a lot of that has to do with our technology now too, like where you only had the local newspaper. So you only really knew the movement of your team. And now it's just so wide open. Being in New York, I'm a huge baseball fan. So I'm a Yankee fan first and foremost, but I don't hate the Mets. I follow everything they're doing because I read about it in the paper. It's on the news. You know, I'm a big prospect guy, so you know, got to see all these guys that just went to the World Series coming up through the system. And it's, you know, it's kind of the same thing. Like you can, you know, you could follow anybody's, you know, Twitter handle now, or you know, get highlights on every team in any city. Are you so? As far as college goes, you're not the big college football fan, but if you had to pick one team, would it be the Hurricanes?
Yeah, it would be. It would
Okay.
be. I still kind of enjoy watching them. And that will always, I will always have that emotional tie. I'll watch UJ football and I find myself cheering for them when I have a chance. But because I probably watch as much college film as anybody in the industry,
Yes.
it's more of a job for me.
Okay.
So it's very disjointed. Like I'll show you, but I can't, yeah, I'll show you. Like, you know, I give you a little tour of my
Okay.
place here, and you'll see like over in this corner here that I have like, I think this is right. I think you can see it.
Yeah.
Let's see. Yeah, this is a little hard drive that's attached to my direct TV.
Okay.
And then I usually at this desk have a laptop over here, and this goes with what I call a hoppage drive. This is what's called a hoppage drive.
Okay.
If I can show that. There it is. Okay, that hoppage drive. And basically what I do is I'm just recording game after game after game. And if I want to have a game that I want to put on a hard drive that I can actually put on my computer and play and it not be embedded, I can use that hoppage drive to do that. But I have to have the TV playing on real time to record that.
Okay.
Otherwise, I just keep it on this expanded hard drive for my direct TV. But I just pick games to watch along with what I watch on Draft Breakdown, who's just, you know, Brian's site, which is such a great site.
Yep.
But that I'm not keeping up with the narratives. And I find that I don't want to keep up with the narratives because it interferes with my ability to stay as unbiased as possible. And it's just kind of like, okay, I'm watching these guys today. And then somebody will tell me,
Right.
you know, I'll talk to my buddy Rudy down at the gas station we talked about earlier, and he'll go, have you heard about this recruit that Mark Richt is looking at from Washington? I'm like, I know nothing about the guy. I don't know anything about what's going on with that.
Yeah, I'm with you. Once the seed gets planted, you start to try to fill in the story to make that become like why it should be possible. So
or why this guy's great. Like everybody's like, oh, he's up for the Heisman, and oh, this is a great player. And I'm sitting here and I want to be able to watch it and go, well, you know, these are the things he has issues with, and college is not the NFL. And yeah, I can see why people like him, but I try not to keep up with the soap opera part.
Right. All right. And so now this whole has taken you to your love for college guys trying to get into the pros and breaking them down, and your breakdowns are legendary, top notch. And has this led to any interaction with actually taking it to professional scouting level?
You know, I started. It's funny. I mean, I really appreciate that. You know, I would be a liar if I said that I didn't hope to make this a successful publication when I started doing it. It was an experiment, but it was kind of, the idea was like, I want to run my own thing doing this. This is something I think I could enjoy. And I realized, you know, I mean, I turned down some opportunities with other organizations at the time. You know, back in 2006, when I started doing this, I mean, Roto World came to me and said, would you like to write? You'd be working for Greg Rosenthal. You'd be working with a guy named Evan Silva. And I was like, well, I'm doing this book. You know, I'm a writer at FF Today making, you know, $45 an article or $40 an article or something. And, you know, and I was like, you know, this is a really great opportunity, but I'm doing this book, you know, would I be able to still do this book? And Greg was like, well, you could just, you know, write for our magazine and do that. And I just remember thinking that's probably a great deal, especially if, you know, what Greg was probably making in the industry at that time and what might possibly come. And it was his boss who had reached out to me, and I turned it down. And I remember then the next year I had second thoughts because I came out with the RSP, and I think I made like $100 that year doing it. You know, I mean, I didn't expect to make money that early on. I thought 5 to 7 years, let's give this a shot. But I did it, and I just remember thinking it was like I might as well have dropped something into a black hole, and it just disappeared, and I didn't get a lot of feedback. What I did get was really good, and then I reached back out to them, and they're like, we're still interested. You'd write for Fox. You'd write a column for Fox, your gut check column. You'd write that for them. And then I thought, Fox probably wouldn't like the format I do this for. They'd probably want to change it to me doing 500 words. And there's nothing wrong with that, but
Right.
I get in depth, and I didn't want to write 500-word articles when I knew that the fans I had were very rabid fans. I might not have a ton of them,
Right.
but I had the ones I had, I know why I got them.
Right.
And I didn't want to be somebody else to do what I did. And so I turned them out again. Then NBC bought them out, wrote a world out. And I'm watching them on commercials, and the RSPs made, probably about $300 over the span of 3 years. And I'm sitting here thinking, yeah, another stupid decision in my life,
Right.
but I kept sticking with it. And, the turning point came when I started working at Football Guys, and they had licensed the product at one time, and it was enough for me to get a good following with people and introduce the product. And David Dodds and Joe Bryant, I was really thankful that they liked my work as a fantasy writer, and then they felt like the RSP was a really cool product. And so that kind of worked out. And I think what ended up happening is I'd had a lot of people over those years they'd come to me and they go, I write these databases for municipal organizations, and I'm wondering if you and I want to get together and we could use your RSP process and put it on a database that's adjustable, and we could sell this to NFL teams. Like everyone not everyone, but I had multiple people like come up with these types of things and say, let's do this. And I thought, I don't want to be a businessman anymore. I don't want to be a salesman. I don't want to manage other people suggesting to me, and they all meant well, and they all had they were all good ideas. And I was just like thinking, and plus, no one knows me from Adam. I've never played the game. I'm a fantasy writer who's learning this because I feel like the process will teach me. And over time, I had some people come to me, probably around 2008, 2009, around 2009, 2010, maybe a little later, and say, I've scouted for multiple teams, or I've been a scout, or I've met people at other organizations who've read my work and go, this is really good work. It's good quality. I've had a scout said, I've been buying your stuff since 2007.
Right.
I've scouted for multiple people. I still do work with teams, and what your process, I'm saying, not your overall evaluations. He said, they are good. I'm not going to, and which was nice to hear, but he said, your overall process, because I've definitely had some big mistakes as well, but we all do, but he said, your process was more advanced than what the NFL teams do. And that gave me that was like a wow moment. It's not when sales started going up, and I was able to get to a point where now I can look at this and I could make a living doing it now. But I want to wait. I want to be cautious and make sure and have good business sense, and make sure that I can take care of myself and my family, and I can do the things that we need to do and get it to a certain point. And I'm not trying to be a millionaire doing this. It wouldn't happen anyway, but I want to make sure that I'm taking a slow, steady course. And
Right. And you've got it to a point where you can kind of dictate the direction you take this, as opposed to letting somebody else dictate it, because it's out of desperation that, like, well, I want to be here, I want to be there. So if this is what you get, no, I appreciate the offer. Not what I'm looking for. Move on, and I can keep doing it. It's also, I'm glad you said what you said about your whole process, because every week I have some good picks and some bombs, and I feel horrible to the people that I maybe created a loss on their record because they listened to something I said. But it goes back to the whole process, and in looking at certain players, Eddie Lacy, for instance, horrible right now, but if I had told you he was leading the league in rushing and had 10 touchdowns to this point, in the preseason, would you have been surprised to have heard that?
Not at all.
Exactly. So it's, and I'm just using that as an example, but the whole process being like, I'm telling you, I think this guy has better odds to have a good day. It's not always going to come true, but it's not like just a blind, just pulling it out the air and, hey, this is it. So.
Yeah, you gotta be true to how you go about doing things, and that's part of it. At the end of the day, is that when you're starting out in this industry, everyone has different motivations. For some people, it was about making money. You probably have to be a business mind or an entrepreneur in that sense of saying, my goal is to build a business, and it doesn't matter what business it is. And they may try multiple businesses and it not work out, and they're about the idea of a business and running it, and they put those skills into place. That's great. While I had that management background, I approached it as a craft. Like, this is a craft for me. I want to be that guy who, like, you know, there's that old Italian guy out on a farm who like maybe makes like bread, you know, and he's a baker and he's got the stone, you know, and he only makes these types of breads, and people, like the people in the know that he can make some darn good bread,
Right.
and that's it, and he's just focused on that.
Right.
And I thought, that's what I want to do. I don't want to have a bunch of RSP employees.
Yeah.
I don't want to manage 8 people and have, you know, make lots more money, but then have to people telling me that one guy's inconsistent from the other and that I'm always managing that to get it tighter. I just want to be good at this, and I just want to keep doing it. But it's tempting. It's tempting to have, you know, when someone comes from an organization and says, we like your work, we'd like you to do this for us. And I go, why would you like me to do that for you? You're going to have me writing aggregated blurbs on news for a site that's got a big name and three initials with a .com next to it. And that's great. But, you know, the real thing I do that got your attention is not this stuff. You can get anybody to do that even for the amount that you're paying. You can get people to do that. You know, so, but, you know, people understandably take it because they go, well, if I get that name next to my name, now I can do more. And that's a viable thing.
Yeah, but it winds up being your freshman year at Miami all over again, where it's, wait a minute, hold on. I was just a big fish in a little pond. Now I'm like a nobody. So you go back to being a number and not a name anymore. So I totally get it. But you're in a place where your name has made itself. And it kind of goes back to your musical background as well, that, you know, most musicians are in it because they just like playing music. And if the band breaks, you know, takes off, it takes off. And the people who I noticed just in life that are successful, whether it's doing, you know, this work or others, when you do it, like you said, you didn't get into it to try to make money or, you know, be the greatest at it. You did it because you had a passion for it. You would enjoy it. You enjoyed it. And you just started rising to the top because of it. And now you are one of the, you know, the better names in it and are able to sustain, you know, an income from it. So it's a reward.
Yeah, and it's always a challenge. I mean, every year at certain times of year, I sit there and tell my wife in my neurotic way, I'm like, I don't know if this is going to be as good a year as last year, or if this is going to work out, or, you know, we need to plan as if it's not going to be all that good, and it keeps growing, so it's good. But my wife has learned not to listen to me about that. It's just you know, it's kind of that doom and gloom. And I kind of came from a more difficult situation to started doing this, and I felt like that it was something that I had to get started doing this. I mean, I was doing well in my career, but you know, I'll just say that, you know, I was trying to help some people out who were very close to me during that time in my life in the early 2000s, and it put some financial constraints on me in a way that were difficult. And I had to go through some, there are people who go through more hardships than I've gone through, but I had to go through some things that made it difficult. I mean, Mike McGregor, if it weren't for Mike McGregor at FF Today, I might not have been writing at FF Today to begin with, because at that time I couldn't even afford a computer. I had a laptop that I had since the late 90s. And while I was doing well in my career and keeping up with appearances doing that, I didn't have the money to afford a new computer. It took me 40 minutes sometimes to get my computer to start up. Wow. So he bought me a computer, a new computer to keep me writing at that site, you know, things like that. And I mean, and I could go into more, but that is going to sound melodramatic. But I mean, I'll just say that, you know, so I worry, you know, I sit there, I look back at where I came from and what I do, and I go, you know, I'm not sitting there trying to be, you know, super rich. I just want to be able to make sure that I'm always working hard, and that I'm always doing what I need to do to get it where it's at. And it's, and you know, at some point when you're in your life and you go, I'm working really hard on something I don't like, what if I did something that I really care about and love? There's no way I can fail. And I think that that's what I think that you'll see that as a common theme probably with a lot of your guests is it's about that passion and continuing to just work at something and get good at it.
Absolutely. And, you know, he obviously saw something in you then to know that you had this potential in you. So it's probably one of the best investments he made. And I speak for tens of thousands when I say thank you for making that investment in you, because you have been a crucial part to this industry and a benefit for everybody that's read your work. So we're all happy that he made that investment in you, and we got who we got from you today. Now, I have been procuring gifts from my guests for members of the audience. So, for instance, we have an entry into Scott Fish Bowl for next year. We have JJ Zacharias in late round QB is going to do a 20-minute Skype consultation for somebody's draft next season. Matt Harmon is going to give away a copy of his Reception Perception 2 when he puts that out. So, without twisting your arm too much, what would you feel comfortable with parting ways with from either a member of your audience or mine, or somebody that's just stumbled upon the show for the first time today?
Oh, that's easy. We can give him. We can either do the 2000. Let's do this. Let's do the 2015 rookie scouting portfolio and post draft, and a free issue for the upcoming one too, for the 2016 one.
Wow.
So we'll do both.
A double gift. Yeah. This is amazing.
We'll do a double duty.
I greatly appreciate it. And whoever is lucky enough to win this, I want to be able to borrow this when you're done reading it, so I can check it out. Now, before we come to a conclusion here, I want to ask you a couple more questions, just kind of in rapid fire. Who would you say, if you have one, was your biggest bust that you just thought this guy is going to be amazing and turned out to be nothing?
John Beck, the quarterback at BYU. I loved the way that he moved around on the field. I felt like that he had good accuracy, and he didn't play well under the lights. It was one of those things that didn't click over very well, and he didn't have the arm enough to really justify people wanting to hang on and see how he would grow, because once he didn't show it, it didn't happen.
Got it. Okay. And then conversely, who was your biggest, who'd you hit on most successfully, would you say?
I think I've been probably well known. There's been a number of guys, but I probably have been most known for saying that Russell Wilson was probably very underrated and would be a starter in this league and a successful one, and that there were a lot of comparisons between him and a young Drew Brees. And I liked Drew Brees too. So I would say Wilson is probably the one that I've been most known for. He and Le'Veon Bell, well, there were other guys, but I would say that, yeah, definitely Russell Wilson.
Nice. Okay. Back to the Miami narrative. Do you have a front runner for who you'd like to see as the next coach?
No, I don't. I wish I had a good answer for that one, but I just hope that I would just say that I hope that the school, alumni, and coach are all aligned when it comes to whoever they pick.
Okay. Favorite song to play?
Favorite song to play? I would say that the RSP has probably been fueled more by albums by the group Lettuce than probably any other group that I listen to, because Lettuce is like a funk band out of the Berkeley, Boston area, a horn group that plays a lot of kind of soul, funk, R&B kind of stuff mostly, and they're a bunch of Berkeley music grads who tour around the country and have a pretty nice niche following right now, maybe even more, and they keep me awake better than a cup of coffee. I'll say that. Okay.
Well, all right. So that's your favorite song to play, like hit play on. What will be your favorite song to actually play yourself? Play an instrument?
Oh, as a musician, it's been so long since I've played. I mean, I stopped playing when I was 30, and I sold my horn around that time. But I really enjoyed probably, tunes that I really enjoyed playing. There was a song by John Coltrane by the name of Equinox that I really liked. I really liked that song.
Okay, I am familiar with that. Well, I really want to thank you for joining me. I want to get you back because I like everybody I've had on so far. I could talk to you literally all day, and there's a lot of things. I would, like I said, comment on stuff that you said. Like for instance, my mother is published and wrote a book herself, and then the whole journey of trying to get that published, and she finally self-published it. Just things like that. So hopefully I can get you back on. Hopefully you had a good time today. I want to give you now an opportunity to let everybody know there will be an overlay with your name and your
Sure.
Twitter handle, but let everybody know what it is that you do again and how they can find your work.
Sure. And I appreciate you having me on, Andy. This was great. I'd definitely do it again. You can find me on Twitter at Matt Waldman. You can also find me at my blog, which is mattwaldmanrsp.com. And my blog usually is the gateway drug to everything else that I do. So you can go there and find my gut check column that takes you to footballguys.com, where I write for them. I've been writing for them since 2009. And the RSP blog also publishes my RSP Filmrooms, which are hour-long shows where I watch with folks and we watch tape together, as well as short videos I do called the Boiler Room that are like 5 to 15 minutes that are more produced with a little music and a little bit more, produced analysis. And of course, I will be, I'll be marketing my blog throughout the year, marketing the RSP publication, where you can buy that at mattwaldman.com. mattwaldman.com. You can just go to mattwaldmanrsp.com and it'll take you there if you want to click on the link to things that tell you to order. And so you guys know, 10% of each RSP sale goes towards a charity called Darkness to Light, which is to help educate people on how to prevent and deal with the fallout of sexual abuse in this country. And so, I believe it's I'm trying to remember how many dollars trains a person, but I think it's every $100 trains a person. So it's, we've been able to train a lot of people over the past, since around the Paterno, around the Penn State Jerry Sandusky thing, I started, giving towards that. It was either a year before or that year, I don't remember. But around that, it was the year before, I think. I started doing this, and it's been very successful. And so it goes towards some of it goes towards a good cause as well.
Awesome. And if you've never seen one of Matt's videos in long form or short, do yourself the favor. I'm sure majority of people tuning in are tuning in because you're on this, not because of me. But if you've never seen one of Matt's videos, how ironic
that is, man. Because let me tell you.
Well, do yourself the favor, because they are legendary and they are very professional, and they're the real deal. And if you're into college football, the NFL, the whole draft process, Matt is somebody you definitely have to be following. And not only that, but as he just mentioned, you'll be helping a good cause at the same time by supporting what he does with his work. So this is Andy Singleton for Hanging Einstein, and I've been joined today by Matt Waldman. I really greatly appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun for me, and I hope equally enjoyable for you.
Absolutely, Andy. I look forward to doing it again sometime.
Sounds good, buddy. I appreciate it. Thank you, and we'll see you with the next one.
All right.